Shalom, Yahweh Shem Yahushua Brakatah, Yahweh Shemar Atam Shem Yahushua. This is the Isupk. Started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, in 1969. We're under Commander General Yohana, here to teach the truth of the Bible. The so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American Indians are the real Israelites according to the scriptures. Now, of course, today being Friday is going to be the Lashawan Kodash, aka Ancient Hebrew class. Isupk San Antonio's Hebrew class has been going strong for a couple of years now, and we stick with the basics at the beginning of the month. Last class, we have gone in depth on a scripture, in particular Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, and perfect timing too, because we were getting ready to close out the Feast of Unleavened Bread. In conclusion of the Passover, which was an amazing event, I want y'all to make sure to tune in, make sure you subscribe and click the icon that shows the bell on it. That way you can catch all the footage that's going to be released that we have in the works coming soon, including concert footage, you know what I'm saying, behind the scenes footage of the setup of the Passover, showing all the brothers putting in work, putting their brick in to have such an amazing Lord's Passover for the Most High, you know what I'm saying, under Yahweh. Commander General Yohana spares no expense when it comes to putting these things together. So here in the Isupk, under Commander General Yohana, we keep the law, statutes, and commandments. We bring back the culture of the Bible. That's exactly what you're seeing right now. You understand? Check this out. So Leviticus 23, I'm just going to read it real quick, you know what I'm saying? Because that's not what today's class is going to be about. But we're just kind of doing a refresher where it says, Walahad, Wakwalia, Wa Karamal, La'a, Ta'kalawa, Itazam, Hayawam, Hazak, Habaya'ah, Habayakam, Ata, Koraban, Alahayakam, Kakwat, Aywalam, Ladarath Yakam, Bakal, Mashabath Yakam. I wanted to say this because one of the words, when we're looking at, vocabulary words, I always see that I'll square out the root word, you know what I'm saying? That way we can see how the prepositions and adjectives are added to these words. One word I want to point out is this one right here, Shabbat. Now, when have we heard that before? We've heard that for the actual date, Sabbath, which means what? Which means rest. And what is the dwelling place? It's a place where you rest, you know what I'm saying? Case in point, Blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians, we work long hours for slaveries that barely pay us enough to get our rent paid, right? Just to even have a dwelling place. And where does everyone want to spend the weekends when we don't have enough money to go out and do all this extra stuff? We are at rest in our homes, you know what I'm saying? The scripture even says Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. Well, there's your dwelling. There's your place of rest. And Shabbat is a word that means resting place or dwelling. You understand? Some vocabulary for you there. You understand? Darath means generation or lineage. You know what I'm saying? Offspring, that sort of thing. That's the Isupk goes into the ancient Hebrew in the dialect that is what we believe to be the most accurate with the ancient Paleo Hebrew, meaning there are no vowels. It is all consonants. Everything that we do is for a specific reason so that we can bring out the original dialect that we believe to be accurate with the times of the Bible. You know what I'm saying? Go back all the way to Noah and his son Shem specifically was the seed that would produce one of the sons that would speak Hebrew by the name of Eber. You understand? And so Hebrew, like as it stands right here, is going to be a language that goes all the way back to that time and possibly even before that. You understand? And so when we go into these alphabets, like when we do the basics, we have to start with the building blocks of understanding Hebrew, and that is, of course, the alphabet itself. Now, we've gone over the alphabet a couple times, but one of the things that we start to run into as we start to see this alphabet in its various forms, you know what I mean, that we have to be ready to know what it looks like, whether we're seeing it on an Android phone or an iPhone, whether we're seeing it on the Bible Hub app or we're seeing it on a scroll. You understand? Shout out to Captain Katazal, who recently actually handmade scrolls with the Lord's Prayer on them and sold them in Passover. I believe Officer Kabar of Isupk San Antonio did manage to get one. So perhaps at some point during class in the future, we can actually show you how that looks when it's on a scroll itself. We do have our Sabbath service scroll, but we try not to use, that. It's a pretty hefty thing to deal with it single-handedly to show you the Hebrew on it. Now, the alphabet itself, and this kind of goes without saying that this is the building block of all Hebrew. All right. Now, why am I going to draw two here? I'm going to do that because I'm actually going to do exactly what we have on the side over here. And when you look at that side, you're going to see that you have the pronunciation of the character, then you have the ancient Hebrew version, and then the Assyrian version of that character. Okay. Let me find a good marker here, y'all. That way I can get y'all a better visual here. All right. Bear with me 1 second. Yeah, this looks like good. Probably won't. We call it the Assyrian Hebrew. The Assyrian Hebrew would equate to the time of approximately 1000 to 700 BC, when Israel was split into two states. If you go to the book of 2 Kings chapter 17, it tells you that Israel was removed from our land and was brought to a land called Assyria. I believe the Shalmaneser was the name of the Assyrian king at the time that this took place. And during that time, Israel was planted or rooted out of the land of Israel. The northern tribes were then planted in the land where they ended up building this type of Hebrew right here. Now, another thing that you'll see that is that some of these characters, even the ancient Hebrew, carry over all the way to the United States of America when you start to see them come over here around 900 to 800 or even 700 BC, where the settlements of the indigenous people started to build, burial grounds, started to build civilizations, and in that civilization, the language that was used was in fact a Hebrew type of language, different dialect most likely, because learning, on the fly and learning as a how do they say it, as a passed down culture, it sometimes loses a little bit of its exactness. And so, for the most part, though, a lot of that was intact. The ancient Paleo Hebrew for looks like this. You can see it. Let me see if I can find a better mark for this. It seems to be an ongoing issue. Can't ever get a good mark here. You know what I mean? So and then we're going to go to the alphabet today, but what I want you to do is to get into the habit of actually practicing writing the characters down. The reason why I always hit home on that is because as you write them down, it makes it easier to remember it, because you're going to write it and then you're going to say it as you write it. And then you can reverse engineer that by hearing it and then being able to write it because you're used to hearing it while you're writing it, or saying it while you're writing it. Without being too complicated here, let's actually take a look at what some of these characters look like, and then we're going to practice it. So you can follow along with me, but I would recommend that you use a loose leaf or spiral notebook, composition notebook, any kind of writing paper that has lines on it. As you see, I have to write my line board here, but it definitely helps out if you have a piece of paper for you to write on. You're going to write the character multiple times. The best way to commit Hebrew to memory is to practice. You can't just wing it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times, Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we get lazy in the Edomite school system, and I completely understand that because it's a very pacifying experience. So our people are used to falling asleep during class, not taking any notes, not doing any homework, not doing anything that's going to get them where they need to be a educational standpoint. Forced into doing it, and then perhaps maybe over time you may have just done enough to maybe pass through high school, but it took at least a little bit of effort, right? But we have to take all the effort necessary to come back to our culture, including our language, which is very difficult to do when it is the second or maybe even third or fourth language that you know. You know what I'm saying? So it takes a bit of studying to do so. As we write the character you want to keep in mind what it means. It means the head of the capital. It is, in its essence, a visual pictogram, a hieroglyph if you will, in its ancient form. Can't really speak in regards to the Assyrian form because it's different. You know what I'm saying? So we have ah, and I've written it, and I've even written the pronunciation. All right. Why? I'm gonna just go ahead and start writing these lines here. I'm trying to see if I have room for everything. God, God. All right, I'm just trying to keep this as narrow as I can. Da. Let me know if y'all have any issues seeing the screen. Let me check the screen. Slide. Right. It looks like it's visual enough. Okay, no sweat, sis. No sweat. On sign practice. Again, we just practicing the Hebrew. That's all we gotta do today. It's an easy assignment. This class is gonna be a shorter class because we're gonna go straight to the Sabbath service right after we finish our class today with me and Officer Tapiyar, where we're gonna be holding down the Sabbath early because Isupk has things going on tomorrow that are gonna require us to be up and early, ready for that. So sometimes the marker wants to write good, and most of the time it's kind of terrible. So it is what it is. Ta. Yeah. All right. Just check real quick. I noticed my should get hella crooked. Let me fix that. La. Trying, bro. It keeps leaning over. Um, if that's all the room we have room for, then that's fine. So, and then we'll finish the rest next time. But we're going to practice these first. All right. Still looking for a good marker. Let's see what other ones we got. That one's terrible. You know, what's crazy is that I actually recently bought a whole new pack of markers. It's just the humidity of the environment in Texas, not very marker friendly over here, you know. So we just kind of work with what we got, you know. Oh, that's a good one. This one might actually do something. Okay. Looks kind of pink. I don't like that. But hey, you can see it. Very easily seen. All right, let's try this one. So again, we got as we've written all the way over here. And again, this is important because we learn two different alphabets at the same exact time. You can do that one time, but what you'll quickly come to find out is that there are times where we need to be able to read in ancient Hebrew, and then there are times which, admittedly, is actually more common that we see the Assyrian Hebrew during your weekly Sabbath service and things like that. So knowing both is important. Now, as far as the character and how it's written, you can kind of go with your own flair. Some people go like this and then like this, right? I tend to do this and then write them like that. Have a little bit of a lip on the end. There's your I right there. It almost looks like an H, but it's not really an H because H looks like this, and it's a little bit more complex than that, right? And you're practicing as you write it. You'll say it. Ah, 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 ah. You're going to do that until you get all the way to the end of the paper. Okay. Matter of fact, if you have any children that you're trying to teach Hebrew, this is a really good exercise because This is probably exactly what you did when you were young and you were learning the alphabet for English, right? You had the loose leaf paper, had the lines in the middle that let you know where to draw the lowercase letters, and then you had the full size lines so you knew where to do the the capital letters. But guess what? Hebrew is just all caps. In the ancient Hebrew, at least. The Assyrian Hebrew has some exceptions that we can get into in the next class. Okay? Again, we're just going to fill up this screen here with what we got, and then we're going to close out and then finish this up in the next class. Now we got Bob. All right? Follow along with me. Bob. Look at the style. No, don't draw a 9. That's not necessarily correct. I always like pointing out things that I see or things that I would myself try to do if I was just trying to do it real quick. Think more like a triangle for the first 2 strokes, and then boom, come in smooth like that, right? That is the most accurate way to draw a bar. That is exactly how it looks on the Isupk officer's test. You understand? And that's completely one west right there, that bar. Don't forget it. Bar. 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 See how it curves over? That's exactly by design. Likewise, on the other side of things, and I gotta write from right to left. Let me not get into the habit of doing what I just did earlier. Is writing from right to left when you're writing in here. Almost like it kind of looks like a hook. You know what I mean? Don't draw it like this, because that's a different character. You want to make sure to have that extra part at the bottom. You understand? It just curves down, boom, draw a line, boom, Simple as that. You understand? Do it just like that, you're going to get it right every single time. All right, one more time. I'll do a couple more times. I got a little room here. It's a good marker. We need all our markers to do that right there. There's some soldier markers right here. All right. There's your ba. Again, ba is going to represent a tent. You have the tent. You have the area in front of the tent. It's like a campsite. You understand? Hebrew's got a visual tone to it. You know what I mean? It's pictorial in that sense. It's a way for us to create signs. Hey, these were like the first oldest language on earth was actually characterized by what we know today as memes, which is an image or something with letters on an image that helps you recognize something very quickly. Well, ancient Hebrew has been doing that for thousands of years. You understand? This is a language that has been forgotten about because the lost 12 tribes of the nation of Israel have been stripped of their identity. So we have to come back to our heritage. God. Now, there is a very similar thing here between and God. They both represent the head of an animal. But what animal is it talking about here versus that type of animal it's talking about here? We know this was more so talking about like the lamb or a cow or cattle. Cattle meaning, the kind of cattle that can be used as a resource, as clothes, as food, and things like that. God represents a different type of animal. It represents a camel. That's what it actually represents, is a camel. God. But it can also mean a horse as well, because this is a different type of animal, one that is not to be eaten, but one that is used for laborious work and things like that. You know what I mean? So Gamal is the pronunciation of the actual camel itself. But God is a representation of the camel, and that's what that character represents. So you have food, housing, transportation, right off the bat. With the 3 first characters of the ancient Hebrew alphabet, those are things that are vital to building a society and surviving. And so you have a language here that is hitting all fronts at the same time, giving you a language to speak, giving you signs that are universally recognizable. And the Isupk is the place of universal practical knowledge. So why is it that we're one of the only schools that use this Hebrew? Is because we understand how practical this language is, how it was created to make things easier for us. And heck, it doesn't even have vowels. How much easier could it get? Now we have guy on the other side. Guy kind of looks almost like one of them ninja throwing stars, you know? That's at least what comes to mind when I see it. God. I just kind of draw this squiggly that goes out like that. Then I finish it by giving them like that. You know what I mean? That's the form. You don't have to draw it exactly like I do. Heck, most of you probably have better handwriting than me. God. Straight like that. You stick with the right form, and that's why you want to write it over and over, because you start to get a muscle memory on how these particular strokes go. And that's important because if you draw a certain character like we was talking about earlier, Ba, without the end, the extra bit on the end, it'll look like Ba. You know what I mean? It'll look like a whole different character. So that's the reason why we want to practice it. Okay. Now we have Da. Everybody knows Da. Da means door. Now with Da is two doors put together, which means a shield. The door is a shield to a home. It can only be brought low by the man in the house. So Da is a multi-purposes thing too. And in fact, the door of the teepee would look like that shape because Native Americans had teepees that actually looked like that shape right there. So the entrance was also triangular. All right. So that's not to be forgotten. Da in the Assyrian Hebrew looks like this. Da. 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 And if this means door, then this represents maybe a slightly more modernized type of door. Da. 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 Again, there's an extra lip that goes over. Don't draw like that. But make sure to have that little extra lip right there, and then you got a da right there. So right, top yard. Go ahead and do one for them. Show them the ancient version and then the Assyrian version of Ha. And right from right to left. Hold up, you're missing on. You're missing on. It's three.
Yeah.
And then say it after you write.
Come back the door, but not really.
Now, Ha means to reveal. Character that he's drawing right there means a revealing of something. You understand? Revealing of something. That's good. That look good right there. Perfect.
Make sure it's connected though. A lot of people probably connect and make it like look like in. It's not a full in. It's
connected. Yeah, there's no connection there. Now you'll see that it looks like that on the iPhone and the Android apps, right? For the Assyrian. So if anything, they at least look similar with that. You were using which marker? This one or the other?
All right.
Now we have Wa. Wa looks like a Y. Wa, you know what I'm saying? It's easy to remember that. Wa. It also means hook or peg, and it actually looks like a hook and a peg at the same time. So you would use hooks or pegs to build a home. We call them today fasteners. Nowadays, a peg would be a stake, right? S-T-A-K-E, stake, or a nail or screw. Those are fasteners that we use now. Mainly, the idea here is that this character represents joining something with something else. Wow. Which is why that literally means door joined to another door, which means, you know what I'm saying? That's how the Da is actually the way that it is. You know what I mean? And and then it actually has a name too. I believe it means beloved or something like that, right? Wa in the Assyrian Hebrew looks like this, more or less like this. Wa, wa. Don't like come out too far, because again, that's another character, right? That's even an ancient Hebrew character. But the how do I say, the formal version looks like this. You may see it on an Android app where it's just a line, just like that. So either one of these you're going to recognize, but you got to be able to recognize the one that your app is going to have. However, if we're being formal, if we're doing like tests or anything like that, then it needs to have this extra piece right there, because that's the handwritten version of WAP. Okay, that's the handwritten version. So don't get confused with that. We won't talk about the exception for that rule right now. Now we have Za, which represents weapon. Looks very sharp, like a weapon is sharp, right? Like a scythe, or what they call, like those double sword edge scythes that somebody has, or just something that's very sharp. So Za means weapon, or Zion. Za. Now, on the other side, Za looks like this. Za looks like this. Za. Almost like a squiggly T. You know what I mean? Za. Za. Don't get mixed up with Ga. All right? It's almost like a little bit too turned over. You want it to go across and then down. Za. Across and then down. More or less. All right? Now that we have that, let's go with Ka. Ka means wall, fortress, community, enclosure. But most importantly, wall. You know what I mean? We've had a president recently that wanted to build a wall. He didn't get his wall. But there will be walls that guard the kingdom of heaven when Christ comes back. And so this, you look at Kai, look at all these next to each other, it almost looks like an actual fence, right? I'm just drawing the same character. Ka. Ka. Now, as far as the pronunciation of it, Ka, technically it's supposed to have a little bit of a sound to it. But you can say Ka, you just have to say it real fast because you don't want it to be mixed up with Ka, which is a lot more of a pronounced K sound. You understand? Ka is almost like when we read that in English, we think chop, but Ka is more of like a looser version of Ka, right? As far as how it's pronounced. Now, Ka in the Assyrian Hebrew looks like this. This is exactly why you have to make sure not to close the ha, right? Because there are a lot of people that are novice with the Assyrian Hebrew that are going to draw ha with the closed gap, and then it's only a smidgen away from looking like ka, right? So want to draw that. Think of it like a table, right? It has a little bit of overhang. It has legs. You're looking at it from the side. You know what I mean? Again, ka means wall, right? Ka means wall, and this still kind of does look like a wall, maybe not as sturdy a wall as the ancient Hebrew, but ka does have that wall type of functionality, right? Ka. The more you see these characters, the easier it will be for you to remember what they look like, remember how to say them when you see them. And then before you know it, you'll be reading the Hebrew during the Sabbath service. You'll be able to follow along with us, or at least get the idea of it until you start seeing a lot of these words constantly. And that's the idea. You know what I'm saying? The idea is to immerse yourself in the culture. And that's why we're immersing ourselves in the alphabet right now, because we need to see more of it. We got to get more examples of it. Ta. Think of like a target. When I think of ta, I think of a target. That's just how I remember that it is ta. Like you literally have X marks the spot, right? Like the target right there in the middle. You know what I mean? We think of our Target store as something kind of similar, right? You go to Target, it looks like that. Ancient Hebrew just has it like this, almost like a stop sign. One of the most cool stop signs. Ta. Now, how I remember it on the other side of the coin when we're talking about the Assyrian Hebrew, there's no clever way to think of it other than the way that I thought about it, because it kind of has this swoop right here. Like, you know how when you were young and you tried to draw birds in the sky, you would do like this, right? Well, when you try to draw a tie, think of that same type of ant. Then you come in like a square, and then you come up and leave some overhang right there. Tie looks like a piece of toast. That's how I remember the tie in the Assyrian, how it looks like a piece of toast. That's just how I do it, you know what I'm saying? But however, you got to remind yourself that tie looks like a piece of toast in the Assyrian Hebrew. You know what I mean? Try to remember that however you can. Once you start to get that bird stroke, then you come over here, boom, square it up. Just like that. Top. You know? You don't want to just draw a square, right? Because look at Ma. Ma is literally a square. So you can't just go square it off like that. You got to do the bird stroke. I don't even know if I should even call it that. But you draw that little, you know what I mean? Like the bread. You know, when you look at a loaf of bread, how they got the little, it looks like got little ears on the top. When you look at it from the side, that's kind of like what we're drawing here. Again, tie reminds me of a piece of toast. Tie Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, reminds me of a target. Okay, a target, and then you'll remember tie a lot easier with tips and tricks like that. Yah. Now this is just one you gotta know, but Yah visually means arm. Yah. Yeah, this is one that we should know because it's in the Most High's name. So definitely know this. Yah. It's almost like F with the extra part coming out. Boom. Yeah. Has a little bit of a turn. It's not completely sideways like this. It's not like that. It's actually turned over. It has to have a little bit of a lean to it. You know what I'm saying? Just like boom, like that. Yeah. That's the easiest way for me to draw it is the way that I did right there, where I boom, 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 and then boom. Right there. There's Yah. Now, in the Assyrian, this is a real tricky one. I've seen students struggle with this one because it's a smaller character than all the other characters in the Assyrian Hebrew. Remember how I told you that ancient Hebrew is as if you have the caps lock on the keyboard and you're writing in all caps? If you have Facebook and you're on your friend list is Captain Mashak Mayum, you know exactly what I mean, because he uses all caps all the time, 100% of the time. And I completely understand that because Hebrew is all caps. Ancient Hebrew is all caps. If you ever seen Captain Mashak Mayum teach on the street, he speaks in all caps. You know what I'm saying? Like, he speaks with like the sound of many waters. And in fact, Mashak Mayum, the word Mayum literally means water. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna go in here. So we have Yah over here. Looks kind of like, you know how you draw an apostrophe, and nobody even does that anymore, right? But if you were to say a word like won't, that little thing that's hanging in the air, right? If you say can't, that's called an apostrophe. Technically, it's supposed to look like this, right? But nobody does it anymore because, you know, they don't do cursive, they don't teach, nothing like that in school no more. Kids just use your tablet for everything now, I get it. So anyway, so now we got that. Now look at the Yah right there. Boom, just Yah. Yeah, notice that, okay, it looks a lot like God, right? But if we were to write the Most High's name, Yah, Ha, and then Wah, and then another Ha. The important thing here is that character, Yah, is hovering in the air. Where you draw the line, where you're drawing the characters, that it has to be in the air. You can't just have it like that because, first of all, that looks like God, and that's the wrong Hebrew for that particular example. So this, you'll notice, I'm not trying to draw it anywhere near the bottom line. I'm drawing it hovering in the air. Yeah, 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 yeah. Just like that. Yeah. When you do that, that's close enough. That's the idea with that. Ka. Ka means palm. And that is exactly what you're drawing. The only thing that's missing is the thumb. But you got the 4 fingers right here. Ka. Always remember which way it is. It's not this way. It doesn't point that way. It points to the left. Just like how Hebrew is drawn from right to left. Think about that like that. So you're drawing it to the left. It's almost like a K, right? When you think of the letter K, except, we know K in English is facing that way, right? Well, not only does it have to face the other way because Hebrew is read from right to left, but the actual character itself looks like a semicircle, I guess you want to call that. And then boom, you got the 2 flames coming out. That means palm. That's literally your palm. Minus the, So that's what that represents. Kapiyar is a good name. He's a perfect example of it because his name literally means young lion. And lions have a weapon that dogs don't have. They have palms, which they can use with retractable claws. They can scratch. They hunt their prey. They drag their prey down using their claws. Dogs, theirs are not as useful because they don't have control the way cats do. Big cats especially. But even small cats will, will go on the hunt around the house for just random things to pounce on, and they use their palms for that. Ka. You're going to write that down, Ka. And then before you know it, boom, you're going to have that on point. Now, Ka in the Assyrian, a little bit different. Like this, Ka. Think of it like you're drawing a semicircle and then boom, you're coming in straight like that. Ka. Don't do like Ba. That's why I kind of just I don't lift the marker. I go straight across. Boom, Ka, just like that. All right. Now there is a alternative variant. We're going to talk about the alternative variants in the last class, but we're going to get through the rest of these, and then we're going to go ahead and jump straight into the Sabbath service so that you can use what you're seeing here in the Sabbath service, which is going to be on a different stream. Okay. So going and seeing most of the alphabet here is going to give you a kind of like a good warm up for when we go into the Sabbath service tonight. So you kind of already have this in your mind because you've been looking at it the whole class. La means staff. La means staff. Who holds a staff? A leader holds a staff, right? Somebody who's a loyal servant can hold a staff, right? Like La, you see in a lot of names that are pertaining to women who are going to be the foundation of a family, So they are a leader in their family. Now, it's just coincidental that the leader starts with an L, right? But staff actually does represent leadership of some sort, okay? Companion of some sort. Somebody that stands firm, somebody that, like you think of like when somebody plants a flag, or like when Moses parted the Red Sea, used staff to do so, right? That's the sign of a leader. La means leadership. It means staff. It means support, strong support. La in the Assyrian here, I can't help you with this. It looks like if you were to draw a 3, that'll give you the best chance of remembering what La looks like. But again, Na kind of looks like a 3 also. So what kind of 3 is this? You got a little hump, big hump, turn into a question mark. I can't explain it in any other way because it's a very complicated character. You may see it drawn with a straight line that comes into a question mark. That's perfectly fine. You'll see it like this, like that, to that extent. But technically, it's supposed to be a loop here and then another loop here. So loop here, or straight line. Depends on if you're using Android or iOS. You're going to see it in those forms there. Be on the lookout for La because it's one of the more difficult to remember characters when you're looking at it in the Assyrian. It's super easy in the ancient Hebrew. That's why a lot of brothers like the ancient Hebrew because there's so many reminiscent things to what they're used to today. B kind of looks like it's flipped around. Ah looks like it's flipped to the side. You got Zai. Some of these characters already kind of look like what you're used to. So the ancient Hebrew is obviously our favorite. It is the original language, you know what I'm saying, for the Israelites. So we want to try to keep that, but we also need to know this, all right? At least for now. Maybe when the kingdom happens, I don't know if we're going to still use the Assyrian, but I would hope that we're using this or some form that's reminiscent of this. Ma looks like almost like the way M does in English. You got extra squigglies here. You got boom, 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 like that. It almost looks like water in a body of water. Ma actually means water. Mayam is the word that represents water, but the character Ma is a visual representation of water. If you were to put a sign on a well, you would put this sign right here to let the people know that there's water in that well, or that levee, or whatever you want to call it, right? There's water there. If you're in a forest and you're trying to escape, you're trying to find water like an ocean or some kind of edge of the continent, then this would be a sign that you can use to let people know, hey, there's water in this direction. You know what I'm saying? If you follow that direction. So it's a very important character right here, just as important as food is up top, because obviously we survive and die whether or not we have water or not, right? Ma looks like a square with a lip coming off the top in the Assyrian Hebrew. That's how it's going to look. The invariant is just a regular square, and that's the reason why we don't want to try to confuse it with tile. That's why we have to draw a tile the way we do, because Ma is the one that has this form right here. Ma. Ma. You don't have to exaggerate that lip, it just has to go over just a little bit. Can you finish it up? Finish these last two characters. Let's go.
Syrian is going to be kind of like how law is, but it's going to be a lot different. This. Instead of having that line from like a 3. Nah. 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 It's like it. It's not saying, and you can get those mixed up very easily. Nah. 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 Next, we got saw. Saw. Next, which is this one. This. Saw. Saw. Kind of like that. Saw. 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 Destination. Now I get the Syrian Song. This one kind of like an O, but it has a little lip at the top. So we kind of write it like this. Sa. 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 Ah, da, ga, da, ha, wa, sa, ka, ta, ya, ka, la, ma, na, sha, ka. We're going to go ahead and say this one more time, then we're going to go ahead and end and go to Sabbath service. But run through this real quick. So you have A, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, Wa, Za, Ka, Ta, Ya, Ka, La, Ma, Na, Sa. But it'd be important you guys take a picture of this, kind of write it in your notes. Write it down over and over again until you get it. Kind of like how you do it in school. How you do in school when you first learn, cursive, or when you first learn, alphabet, you would write it down in the line. The teacher would have you write it over and over and over again. You got to do the same thing with the ancient Hebrew. You got to write it over and over and over again until you get it. So just kind of write it down on a notebook or a paper and write it over and over until you remember it in your brain, until it's stuck in your brain, until you can't forget it no more. But now we're going to be continuing on to the Sabbath service. So right out, don't leave yet. Just go ahead and hop on to the Sabbath service. It's going to be starting right up after. With that, Shalom Yahweh Shabbat to all the brothers. Shalom Yahweh Shabbat to all the sisters in the Israelite school, Universal Knowledge, the oneness, one history, on the